your seats, and we will go ahead and begin. All right. Buenas and Hafide, everybody. Thank you for coming to our third AG's Protect One Another Village Q&A, this time in the heart of our island, the beautiful village of Tamuning, Tuma, and Harmon. I'm going to go ahead and hand the microphone for her welcoming remarks, the Honorable Mayor, Luis C. Rivera. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Austin. I'd just like to thank the Attorney General for answering our call. A lot of our residents have expressed to me their concern about having this town meeting here after seeing it being held in other villages. So thank you, Attorney General Moylan, and to his wonderful staff for coming together to put this together for all of us. Everybody welcome. We also have refreshments back there. There's a bottle of water and sodas. We have the restrooms here on the left side of me. So, if you have any questions at all, and even any concerns that you have in our community, please do not hesitate to make time to come and see me or any of my staff to give your number for us to get back to you. But again, this is all the questions you have for the Attorney General and all their different divisions, all the questions you want answered. This is the time to bring it up and to stay active in our community for a happy and safer place. Sizos Masi for being here.
So, good afternoon, buenas everybody. We were thinking, this is supposed to be a Saturday event. It's very laid back, and quite frankly, as we get into it, I'm going to want everybody in the audience to raise their hand, make it practical, make it productive for you to be here on a Saturday. One of the things that we decided to do to kind of mix this up so we don't have this cookie cutter village outreach and it's just all the same and so forth, because it's also being live streamed. I have my lead investigator, because firearms is usually the first thing that people think of when they think of home defense. I have my investigator that's going to give a 5 or 10 minute presentation. We have lead investigator William Salisbury, former Marine and peace officer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like the General said, normally it's with outreach, firearm is always the topic, right? Whenever we do castle doctrine or any type of self-defense. So what I would like to put out is the fundamental firearm safety rules, okay? Whether you're an experienced firearm owner or an inexperienced firearm owner, okay? The number one rule anywhere is to treat every firearm as if they were loaded. As you can see here, this is our office rifle. It's an AR-15 shorty, expandable buttstock, okay? Cable lock. Whenever you're not going to use your firearm, this is one of the ways to keep it safe away from inexperienced gun owners, children, and family members, okay? New users need to practice the rules so it becomes second nature. Meaning whenever you're around a firearm, near a firearm, handling a firearm, you must always treat that firearm as if it was loaded. Experienced users do not become complacent. Just because you have many years of experience with a firearm, okay? In our world, complacency kills. Coming out of the Marine Corps, that's exactly what we teach. Complacency kills. Never be complacent. So first rule, treat every firearm as if it was loaded. Even if you are certain the weapon is empty, always treat it as a loaded weapon. Don't do anything with an unloaded gun that wouldn't be safe with a loaded gun. Meaning, I have a safe firearm here, but I'm not going to bring it up and I'm not going to point it around to anyone in the room. Okay? That's a no-no. Many people have been accidentally killed by unloaded firearms. And what that means is, at first they thought it was clear. The minute they start playing with it, it goes off. For me, whenever I do firearms instruction, there's no such thing as an accident. Okay? It's pure negligence. Period. Never accept another person's word that a gun is unloaded. You must always verify. So if I'm going to use this firearm on this table, and somebody tells me, oh, don't worry, the gun is safe, I'm not going to take that person's word. I'm going to take that firearm, point it in a safe direction, and I'm going to clear it. And I'm going to visually and physically to check to make sure that firearm is clear and safe. Number 2, never let the muzzle cross anything you are not willing to destroy or shoot. Meaning if you're on target, that doesn't mean you're going to spray and pray. Okay? Remember, once you pull that trigger, there's no coming back. There's no do-over. What happens, happens. Imagine a laser beam coming out of the barrel of your weapon. Never let that laser touch anything, even for a moment, that you aren't willing to shoot. Keep the weapon pointed in a direction that will safely stop any bullet fired. Simply means if you're going to shoot that firearm, you must know what's behind your target. Because if you're going to shoot in a wooden house versus a concrete structure, it will go through several pieces of that wood and continue traveling until that bullet stops. Number 3, keep your finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until you want the gun to fire. So the fundamental rule is, as you grasp the weapon, your trigger finger is always aligned with the firearm. Until I'm ready to fire that firearm is when I actually put my finger in the trigger and fire, knowing what my target is and what's behind my target. This prevents you from unintentionally firing because you were started or clutched something with your other hand. Simply, you'll be negligent once that firearm is activated. And number 4, know your target and what's beyond it. Always positively identify your target as what you intend to shoot. Be absolutely certain of what or who you are shooting. You don't just shoot a firearm simply because you want to or you can. Bullets may travel through a target and strike something behind it, hence shooting into a wooden structure. You may miss, especially under stress. So if you get into a stressful situation, mistakes will happen. And that's where experience comes into play when you handle a firearm, most especially when it's loaded. Additional safety considerations when handling a firearm. Do not allow children or unauthorized users access. Meaning, if you're the only one that controls that firearm, you're the only one that should touch that firearm. There's no show and tell with a firearm, at least not for me. Handle weapons only while sober. No alcohol, no drugs, no prescription drugs. Especially no prescription drugs. You must always inspect and maintain your weapon, and for law enforcement, we always must inspect our equipment. Okay? One of my pet peeves is if I take people to the range, the first thing I check is the cleanliness of the weapon. Because if you come to the range with a dirty weapon, that tells me you're not respecting the weapon. Because then now I have to worry about things going wrong while on the range. But if you have a clean weapon, an operational weapon, we should have no problem. Plus, use the correct ammunition. If you're into reloading, like how I am, right? I know my ammo, but I'm not going to pass out my ammo to somebody else. Always use manufactured ammo that they're sold in the stores. Always follow manufacturer recommendations. So for us in the AG's office, that's the fundamental firearm safety rules that I go through with all our investigators and some of our process officers who are allowed to carry a firearm. Any questions? Mark?
So, thank you, Mark. Mark, what I'm going to do here is, just stay up here. This is how we're opening today, just to let you guys understand that most of you are talking about firearms. That's the most common home defense weapon that most homes are going to use to defend themselves. Wack, present me your pistol. Yeah, and disarm it. So the practical side of this, and I'm just going to end with this for purposes of Wack, William Salisbury here. See what he did there? Whenever you have, and this is a pistol, right? This is a semi-automatic pistol. It's not the one with the revolver that moves around. Whenever you have this at home, and this is where my parents would always teach me, you never hand a firearm over to anybody without opening the breech like that and the magazine is out. Because there could be a bullet in the chamber, you hand it over, somebody presses the trigger, and then it discharges accidentally, okay? So what you see here, this is called the breech. It's open. It's closed there. There's no magazine in it. Basically, you're clearing the chamber, so there's no bullet in it. Most homes have a semi-automatic these days. Some homes still have the revolvers. Revolver, you'd have to open it up, drop all the bullets out of it, and then hand it over with the revolver open, that sort of thing. So that's the practical side of what we're going to be talking about today. So to let you guys know, we've got our actual prosecutors here, the attorneys that deal with the daily arrests that come in from Guam Police Department. And I'd also like to recognize Sergeant Tapao, as well as Captain Santos, who are here today. To my right, I have our prosecutor from Kansas, Chris Gray. Lucas Wood, prosecutor. And Lyle Stamps, William Stamps. So, ladies and gentlemen, to begin this presentation, the most important thing I want to say is that life is precious, okay? That's how we have to start our conversation here, because we're dealing with life and death when you're talking about home defense and defending yourselves. Last weekend was almost a perfect example of what's going on in our community, and I keep on harping on it. It's the repeat criminals and the meth addicts that are causing us at the Attorney General's office the most problems. People are going from nonviolent to violent crimes because of the drug. It changes the brain. It's one of the most addictive synthetic drugs that is known to man right now. But quite frankly, it was back in the 1930s they called it Prevatin. The Germans made it amphetamine for the Battle of the Bulge, for the military purposes, for the super soldier. But apparently, it's stayed around, and they've even refined it more to what we call methamphetamine these days. Okay? So we've got too much of it on our streets. We've got, the price is too low, and it's a combination. That's what's happening. Because you've got so much on the streets, the price is so low. Our community, literally every weekend, we're getting people that can either buy a 6-pack of beer or 6 tokes of meth. which is enough to start getting them addicted. You know, you get on the substance enough, and I would say probably 2 weeks on that, and you've already got an addiction. And either they're going to maintain their addiction, they're going to overdose from it. They maintain the addiction. What happens is the effect of the addiction is they will get whatever they need to get in order to buy more drugs. And that's where we become the prey of the criminal. They're looking for money. They're looking for anything that they can use. The Guam Police Department, if you watch the police blotters or the newspapers, you see that they're constantly pulling over vehicles. What's notable in the vehicles is that, first of all, they're getting pulled over because the meth addicts can't drive right because they're under the influence like you would be in alcohol. So luckily, the police are detecting that. What we're also seeing is that they're not having license plates. They're switching those license plates off because those vehicles they're driving aren't their vehicles. But they're not necessarily stolen either because those low-level meth addicts out there, they're taking their cars, they're borrowing the cars, they're giving it to their distribution network, whoever's giving it to them, as collateral because they don't have anything else. So, and also they're switching the plates on it. So Guam Police Department is excellent. They run the plates as they're watching vehicles to see if it matches the vehicle. And oftentimes, they've got the probable cause to pull them over because the plates don't match. That's the first thing that gets them to be able to pull them over. The second thing is they're finding firearms in the car. And that's what's scary about the meth addicts. They have firearms because they know that they're going to use the weapon either among themselves, because it's almost like a, I don't know how you describe it, it's like a jungle rule type of business. But more so, they'll use the firearm against us in order to take our property. We saw that with the Korean tourist murder. We saw that with the Valentine's Day murder. Law-abiding citizens who are becoming victims. So this is the backdrop in which we're going to talk a little bit about what we call the Castle Doctrine, introduced by some senators. It gives special presumptions, special rights to both in your homes, your cars, and in businesses. Oftentimes, business owners, they live in the business somewhere upstairs, stuff like that. We've already had a few instances where a business owner has had his business broken in at night, and the police department has had to come after they've shot the person that was breaking in. Detective Salisbury, AG Investigator Salisbury, talked about how the firearm is very important. Maintaining your firearm in your home is critical. You're supposed to have a trigger lock on it. A lot of people have safes on it. That's important for the kids. We all know about the States, how in their puberties, these kids are taking the firearms and shooting other kids in their schools because of the emotional trauma that kids may be going through. So on a bigger level, we have to be careful as a community not to let our firearm, especially if you're a parent, be laying around the house without the lock. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question in regards to if you buy a firearm on island, do you have to go to firearm training or?
That's a good question. There's two parts to that. First of all, you need to get a firearms ID, right? Before you can buy a firearm, you have to go to the Guam Police Department and apply for the concealed or non-concealed. The non-concealed, you do not need firearms training. For the concealed, you need firearms training. I think there's a constitutional problem with that, but I mean, that's the way that the statutes are worded. We're looking at it right now, because why do you need a certification when you can get it as a non-concealed firearm permit? But you first need the firearms permit. Once you get that permit, then you can apply to get a firearm. Guam law requires a registration for every firearm to the person who owns it. It's a lifetime. I think the firearms ID is good for 7 years, 5 years? 3 years. Is it 3? 3 years. Okay, so 3 years your firearms ID is good for, but the registration for the firearm is good for the life for that individual that's owning it. If you sell it or give it to somebody, you need to go down in GPD and transfer the firearm properly. Exactly. Yeah. So, and Guam law does require a trigger lock on the firearm, so that, especially if you have children, we don't want them hurting.
If you buy more than one firearm, are you guys tracking the people who are having
Arsenals?
a mess? Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of people that have arsenals on Guam, including me.
Okay.
But no, it is all tracked at at the Guam Police Department. They're the repository for the registrations and all this data. The AG's office, prosecutors, we use it when we're in trial, when we need to investigate certain police reports and crimes. But yeah, that's,
My concern is like if somebody is eligible to buy a firearm and they pass the requirement and whatnot, are they selling it to another person illegally?
right, the abuse of the firearms, that could happen. It would be a violation. You got also ATF involved on it, so the feds, they don't like that stuff. And basically, those people that you're finding on the roads that have the meth, they're obliterating the serial numbers. They're taking it from wherever they can get it. You know, when people die, sometimes the families don't properly dispose of their firearms. And so there's different ways that firearms are getting to these individuals. A lot of these guys are convicted felons that aren't even supposed to have a firearm. We found that already in several of the cases. I think it was the Valentine's Day murder, how that firearm got to the individual that killed the Thai Thai restaurant owner. Those are the type of things that we're dealing with as a community. And you know, one of those unfortunate facts, the Korean tourist that died, it shocked me when I heard it, because not only did the family pay for the ticket for him and his wife to come to Guam because he had retired, but he was a nuclear physicist from Korea. So one of the top of their educated community came to Guam to enjoy themselves and was killed by a meth addict. And right now we're in trial for the driver of the vehicle. But you know, it's destroying we as a people, we as Guamanians on Guam, because when the police came up upon the individual that actually shot the Korean tourist, instead of turning himself in, instead of just saying, "You caught me," he committed suicide. So it shows that, in my opinion, it was because of the guilt. He knew that, I think it was his girlfriend that gave the tip, that he was the one that did it. But instead of shooting it out with the police or just saying, you know, "Take me to the judge," you know, he killed himself. So that is what meth is doing to our community. The problem is we can't control it right now. The inability for our government to stop the flow, to reduce or to increase the price by reducing the quantity is causing these type of events. And I've come to the point that it's not a joke anymore. Because I live in Dededo. Those guys are all over the place. They're using power tools to cut gate locks. They're stealing vehicles. They're taking any property that you have in order to sustain the addiction, and they're willing to kill and hurt in order to get it. So let's get to the statute itself. What we've done is I've actually had our team, thank you, copy this. It's the Castle Doctrine, and I strongly recommend it. Maybe at some point we're going to start to laminate it. But this is the thing that you want to have on your kitchen refrigerator, put on a magnet or something, because this is what the judges, the attorneys, the jurors look at when they're evaluating whether or not you act properly or improperly by defending your home, your loved ones, things like that. That one to the right over here, this Protect Yourself billboard, that was done several months ago. That basically is what we're talking about today, protecting yourself and protecting your loved ones. It's what we call in law, and what is a part of our common law that we got from England, there's a fundamental inherent right, a human right for people to defend themselves. The Castle Doctrine just accentuates that, and it operates on presumptions. Whether you're in a house, your car, or your business, there's a presumption that anyone that's coming into that area will be coming in with deadly intent to hurt you or your family. So the presumption is you get to use deadly force against them, okay? The normal law, the common law, the self-defense law is that when you're in the community like we are now, somebody comes over and they're threatening you and they're going to beat you up, but they have no weapon, you can't just pull your gun out and shoot them. That would be a non-deadly attack. By using deadly force, you become the potential criminal by using a deadly response to a non-deadly situation. Now in Maritzo, we had the situation where a woman's in a wheelchair, or a very small woman, and there's a 300-pound guy coming on her. We kind of walked it through when you're out in the open. You know, it comes down to the Attorney General that you guys elect and the prosecutors that are answerable to me, your elected official. Whether the AG decides to choose to charge something is at the discretion of the Attorney General, the person that's in the position. So when you have like a 80-pound woman, and then there's this big guy coming at them, and it gets to a certain point when I probably would say deadly force was warranted because she couldn't no way defend herself against the aggressor, that sort of thing. But you see, at the end of the day, whether I agree that the case should be prosecuted or not, and if I was to agree and our team was to agree to prosecute it, you ultimately, jurors, are the ones to decide. Literally, you people sitting here, I presume you've served on juries, most of us. You guys will decide whether or not, given the information, and I don't care what we say as prosecutors, you guys make the decision in the jury box with the 12. It's usually a felony type situation. And I use the joke that there's a lot of jury nullification that I've seen in my 33 years as an attorney, where you can tell the jury, and the judge can tell the jury, if you find this, this, and this, you shall find this person guilty or not guilty. Jurors often just go back and decide what's right and wrong. Was it fair? Was it unfair? Things like that. It's common. You don't have to be a college graduate or highly trained to be on a jury. And that's the beauty of our jury system, is it uses the common person to do that. In that section, that 7.112, that first A there is critical to understanding this whole situation that we're in. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask it, interject, so we can make this discussion meaningful. A person is presumed to have held a reasonable fear of imminent peril of death or serious bodily injury to himself or herself or another when using defensive force that is intended or likely to cause death or serious bodily injury to another if, and then it goes through these different sub-paragraphs here. This is basically saying it's a presumption that when the person's coming in your house, you get to shoot them, okay? But I always say be careful when you do that, because the person coming in your house could literally be the boy next door, so in one of the flyers on the frequently asked questions, what would be the rule for most people in a situation like that? Because I often ask myself, if somebody was breaking in my house, would I just shoot them as they're coming through the window or breaking through the door or in the premises? And I often hope to think that I wouldn't just do that, okay? I'm usually the type that wait till you have no other choice, because I think the jury, if you were tried for that, heaven forbid, would probably want to hear that you waited to the last possible moment in order to shoot the person. In response to I think the Maurizo one, the other person said, I think one of the people said, what if I only have one bullet? Or things like that. It's all going to come down to, and this statute gives you the presumption. So the AG's office should not be able to charge you if that was the situation. Person came in, so you can hit him in the head, hit him in the body mass, stuff like that. But shooting them in the leg, there's often different things that you could choose, because I think nobody really any good person normally doesn't want to kill somebody else. So those are kind of like the considerations that when you're actually in the situation, what do you do? The person has to be in the process of unlawfully or forcibly entering or had unlawfully or forcibly entered a business, residence, or occupied vehicle, or if that person had removed or was attempting to remove another against the will. They're also talking about kidnapping here. So if you see that the person is trying to grab one of your family members, your daughter, your kids, deadly force is authorized under the statute to protect the other person. And the way that I read this, deadly force continuing, if that person's running outside with your family member or your friend or whatever, you can follow them and shoot them in order to help that person. And then it says, and the person who uses defensive force knew or had reason to believe that an unlawful or forcible entry, unlawful or forcible act was occurring. This is where the situation is that you know that the boy next door is seeing your daughter and he's jumping in the house all the time, and you know and see him jumping through that window. You can't kill him, okay? Fathers out there, you can't kill him. So the idea is that this statute says that you must believe the person is breaking in your house, and you gotta, if it comes out during the trial that you actually knew that was the boy next door and you hated his guts for keep on getting in your house at night, you just can't shoot him. That would be a form of murder, manslaughter. Yes, sir.
As an example, you mentioned earlier that somebody tried to grab or kidnap your family members, but does that person need to have a weapon in hand or no weapon in hand?
You guys want to answer that?
Good afternoon, sorry. Grab it this way. Sir, the question you proposed was that, does the person who is committing the act, does it have a weapon or not for the castle doctrine to apply? Is that what you're asking, is that correct? So technically, on the basic level, no, they don't have to have a weapon in their hand. There's a presumption if they enter your home, they're committing a crime. And with that, you are the one who's placed in danger because you stepped in. However, a lot of these things are fact specific. It has to be very fact specific. For example, as the general had said earlier, what if it's the next door neighbor and they're just happen to, visiting, and you didn't want them to be there? I mean, we have to kind of apply some common sense to that. But a lot of these questions is the basic part of it is no. The big thing that I do want to make sure is very clear to everybody, and it's something that the general has touched on, is the castle doctrine doesn't give you a license to kill. That's very important. It doesn't give you the right to kill anyone. What it does, though, is it evens the playing field. That's probably the best way to really look at that. Because if you're at your home, it's 2, 3 in the morning, and someone breaks in, you don't have to cower and hide. If you have to protect yourself, you can do so. That's why the best way to really look at that. It doesn't give you the right to kill anyone. It doesn't give you a license to kill anybody. It evens the playing field. All right. Hopefully that answers questions a little bit. You have anything to add, sir?
Of course, sometimes, like you say, you don't intend to kill, but I think under the Guam law, you're not allowed to give a warning shot, right?
You are. And actually, I've said that before. I would prefer to just shoot up in the air, make sure you know where that bullet's going, but I mean, to scare the person. And I usually, I don't know if you guys listen to Ray Gibson, but he keeps on harassing me. But you can shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the kneecap. It hurts more in the kneecap, by the way, in the body. But I mean, that's the idea, and you kind of reflect a little bit. Look at all the Vietnam War, Korean War, Desert Storm. Those guys that came back, they were broken men having killed and seen death. So, there's a lot of considerations to do on if you can shoot. For those of us that have firearms, know how to use it, it's a tool, right? So with that tool, you know how far you can go with it. To take life is a very serious thing. I think it's apart from the law, it's a serious thing to see death, be part of killing somebody. So it's how good you think you are and what the situation brings you. But as Chris has pointed out, once that person enters the house, the law says you have a right to kill them, provided that it looks like the person was breaking in your typical nighttime, daytime, and they're not supposed to be there, that sort of thing. So you have a certain amount of sensory perception that you're doing. Like, no one's supposed to be in the house. They broke that window. They jammed the door open. Those sorts of things lead up to the fact pattern that you use deadly force against them.
Okay. So you could use a warning shot, which
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
okay.
You could shoot. Now, you guys know that there's a statute that says that, what is it? You can't shoot a firearm within 50 yards of a house, okay? You can't discharge the firearm. But obviously, when you're protecting your house, and this statute says, protecting your family, that is, this statute says you can do it. But you can't just go outside and, when nobody's around, just start shooting your neighbors right over there, So, yeah, that's the type of conversations that we're having right now. So, now, what has further... Yes, officer. Captain.
When you talk about warning shots, just remember what goes up comes down. Okay, that projectile, once that thing fires from a weapon, it will not stop, like they said earlier. That bullet will keep going until it runs out of energy. So if you remember anything in school science, again, with gravity, whatever comes down, it's going to come down with equal amount of force when it came out, right? Until it loses energy. So And like they said, sometimes whatever your weapon of choice or ammunition can go through walls, it can go through things. So when you think about warning shots, go up in the air, just like New Year's Eve when everybody's out there, that thing could hit another target. So be cognizant of what is around you too. And they also mentioned that. You got to know what your circumstances.
Yeah, so that's the case. There's a lot of latitude that's given when you're in an emergency situation. Our AG's office is very keen to looking over the facts of it. The most common question that we've gotten in 2 of the outreaches so far is when you don't have a right to own a firearm or shoot a firearm, but there's a firearm in the house, maybe your dad has it in the house and you're confronted with a situation, would the AG's office charge you for using that firearm without an ID and being registered the firearm? The overall answer would probably be no, for 2 reasons. Number one, you're in a situation where your life is threatened, your family members' lives are threatened, so just getting a gun that you may not own or be authorized to use and using it seems okay. Why would we do that? That's number one. Number two is even if we tried to charge you and you guys are sitting in the jury box and you just explained that somebody was breaking in my house, you think any of you would find that person guilty for using the gun? Probably not. So there's a practical side to being a prosecutor because you guys ultimately will decide. Okay, so one of the more difficult situations to talk about now is the curtilage. The curtilage was added to our statutes to expand the Castle Doctrine property that you can protect yourselves and protect your family or whoever's there. Before I talk about the curtilage, the courts have allowed that the people in your house can also avail themselves to the Castle Doctrine. Just say you have a neighbor that came over to your house, was watching TV when somebody was breaking in. That person, although they don't own the house, they have no rights to the house, as long as they're allowed to be there, they can avail themselves to the Castle Doctrine. So, that's what would be happening in that situation. Now, the curtilage is a term of art that lawyers have used in the past to decide whether searches and seizures are proper or not proper. The curtilage is that area around your house that is in your property but is not your home for the most part. The way that the courts have looked at it is that when you have a door and then you have maybe even a gate or your surrounding property to get to your door, police officers and government officials have a right to go to your front door and knock, like the post office and anyone else, your visitors. But they're going through the curtilage to get there, okay? This is a dangerous statute because it says that their deadly force is authorized in the curtilage just as if it was your home, provided certain things exist. The main one is a reasonable notice that no trespassing. It has to have no trespassing up. And as I said in one of our first outreaches, I think it was MTM, if you're going to play the game with the curtilage and shooting people or hurting people in your curtilage, I would recommend you put up a sign that's very clear that says trespassers will be shot. Yeah, it's funny, but that is exactly what the statute, that is your safest bet. If you feel that you're in a war zone and anyone that's, you got a situation where these people are coming to the curtilage and, one of the examples was they have a history. And that's why the police are important. You get the police reports. You show that your neighbor across the street has a habit of jumping in your curtilage and harassing you. You put the signs up. You do the police reports of harassment, especially. These people keep on coming in. And the next time he comes in and tries to assault you, the statute gives you protection, okay? That's how the statute's worded. Again, you can't just, the example we used at the last outreach was somebody stealing your lawnmower. You can't shoot them for stealing property, okay? That's, in common law, self-defense was not allowed when somebody's taking your property. And remember, these are fact-specific, okay? So you would have to prove to the jury, prove to the AG's office, prove to the police officers that the guy wasn't stealing your lawnmower. But if they come to your property and they see him slumped over your lawnmower at the front of your gate trying to leave, and you shot him in the back, that's probably going to get you into some trouble because it's not supposed to be to defend property. um, lo- deadly force can never be used to defend property. That's the general rule. Remember, these are presumptions here. So if the victim's family says that he only went next door to borrow a tool or something, and he's found dead in the curtilage, there may be some questions about it. It's all fact-driven. Right, right, right. And your home. Now remember, again, it's just common sense, okay? There'd be more scrutiny given to someone shot in your yard, especially if there's no gate or anything. Like the kids, the ball goes in the yard, the kid jumps over the gate, grab his ball, and then, that's the danger of the curtilage. Yeah. Well, it is property specific. So you need to legally have your property boundaries. You don't need a gate for the curtilage to be used for protecting, using deadly force under the Castle Doctrine. You literally can just have the signs up. Yes, sir.
And then when's the time to use a deadly force? Do they need to have a deadly weapon like a knife, baseball bat, or a gun for you to
No.
discharge?
No.
No?
Yeah, again, it's the presumption that we have. The presumption is they're coming into your house. Usually the facts are associated. Nighttime, they're breaking something. They're just not walking through your front door. But even then, going through the front door, there's still that they're in dangerous territory of being shot, walking into somebody's house. Okay? Right. There was a question that was brought up one time. Person is in your curtilage, you have the signs up, and they're at your front door, and they shoot through the front. You shoot through your front door to kill that person. Yeah, you see, you guys not in your head know. You're the jurors that are going to be sitting there if we were charging it, and that's what's dangerous for for people that do that. This is not a gun right. We're not. What is it? Yeah, we're not. This is not the Wild Wild West. We're not gunslingers. The idea is you got to bring common sense into these situations. Put yourself in a juror's position, listening to that. And that's why I said in my rule of thumb is, when is the last moment that you can take before discharging the firearm? Just because you hear that person downstairs had glass breaking, that's not the time to just start shooting. It's kind of like see the target, understand, is this a friend or foe? What's the circumstances surrounding what's going on? Shooting in the house, those are things, if you just want to scare him out, that sort of thing, or you're a good shot and shooting something next to him, shooting his leg so he's limping out, that sort of thing. It just depends upon what the situation is and the facts are. The Castle Doctrine also gives immunity, civil immunity. This is more so in the States when often the victims are being sued by the person, the perpetrator. The Castle Doctrine gives you the ability to have the case against you dismissed. Just say that a situation occurred and you shot him in the leg and the person left and got a lawyer and says, I was just there to borrow something and I got shot in the leg when I walked through that door. Assuming that it qualifies under the Castle Doctrine, the court will have to dismiss the case, plus they have to pay your attorney's fees for having brought the case against you under this statute. It has a civil protection. The criminal protection is even good too, because if the AG's office were to charge you and you think with your lawyer that you're protected under this statute, even before getting to the jury, where they get impaneled and a year later and stuff, you literally can ask the judge to dismiss the case against you, which is a good protection because it could be early on in the prosecution. And remember, the prosecution is you guys. That's what the Castle Doctrine is intended to protect. It's the homeowners that have been in the past sued, those sorts of things. Do you guys have general questions? In the handouts we have, the 10 commandments of firearm safety is very important. Things that Investigator Salisbury was talking about. we went over this idea that the deadly force doesn't have to be a firearm. It could be any weapon that you use against people. This law is not intended to be a vigilante justice type of law either. You know, the AG's office, the police department, we all have a role here. Calling the police immediately is always a good idea when you have that opportunity. Usually you don't let the person bleed out in front of you. Immediately after you shoot them, you try to call the ambulance or the police. Actually, the police would be the best thing to do first. A little bit about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, you know that Guam does not have the Second Amendment in our Organic Act. The Bill of Rights that was given to the residents of Guam in the Organic Act doesn't have the Second Amendment in it. So when you're a resident of Guam, it's by statute that they usually provide the protections. Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Can I use a real situation with a what-if question?
Yes.
So I'm sort of like a farmer. So I carry firearms in the back of my truck. And I own some apartments, so sometimes there's dogs and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's another issue as well. But I was in this incident, actually, that hit the news because I videotaped this scenario where I went into one of my apartments, I did something, I left. When I came back, there was a car with two guys, and they were in front of my banana trees. One of the guys steps out of the passenger with a machete in his hand, and I confronted him with my video, saying, "Hey, what are you doing there?" You know, and he says, "Oh, I'm trying to go to this route," kind of thing. I knew that he was
Cutting your
eyeing
bananas?
my bananas.
Yeah.
Had a shotgun in the back of my truck, but I confronted him with a cell phone. It could have turned ugly if he were to, like this,
Right.
and ran in back, and boom. I think I would have been within my rights, fearful for my life because he had a deadly weapon in his hand.
You know, you raise a very interesting point there. I'm going to let our prosecutors chime in when they want to here. So we'll let Prosecutor Gray.
And then this is in my property, by the way, right? So just one of my apartments. I don't live there, but I know that periodically they chop out my bananas, right?
So thank you for that question, sir.
I think it's the Manila. Man, I know. If it's the cooking banana, that's a different story. Yeah.
So let me answer concerning your businesses. Businesses are covered under Castle Doctrine. So like in his situation, if it's his apartment, it's kind of part of the curtilage of the business, it covers that. However, if fact specific, let's say somebody finds, like the jury finds, well, the Castle Doctrine doesn't really apply. This is where the machete versus the gun, it's called proportionality. It's kind of what the doctor had asked. Can I shoot somebody if they don't have a weapon, if they're barehanded, or if they have a weapon? So inside the Castle Doctrine, if you fall within the Castle Doctrine, so if you're within your home, your business, your car, proportionality doesn't apply, meaning that they don't have to have a weapon and you can have a weapon, and if you're protected by Castle Doctrine, you can take their life. If you're not within your castle, that's the important part here. If you're not within the castle, the proportionality needs to be looked at. So the general said this greatly earlier. He said, if you're a small lady and there's a 300-pound person coming at you, we have to look at it fact specific, common sense. Let's look at those things. It's proportionality. Now, if there's a guy in front of you and he has a hat and you take out a gun and shoot him and you're not in your castle, we're going to probably charge, the officers are going to charge that. We're going to look at an office. We'll talk to, of course, our boss and say, hey, we think this is not appropriate under self-defense or Castle Doctrine. And ultimately, he'll make that call. But yeah, Castle Doctrine applies to your businesses, which is what's great about it.
But maybe I want to send a signal out to all those people that take their lives at risk when they think that they can steal someone's property, right? And my thought process with this is, what if I was a hot-headed guy, knowing that I had a shotgun there, and as soon as I saw that machete come out of his hand in the passenger side, not thinking that he's after the bananas, but he's after me, take the shotgun and shoot him,
Yeah.
no questions asked.
Mr. Lizama, right?
Lanetta.
Nanetta?
Lanetta.
Lanetta.
Ray.
You know, you raise a fact pattern that the police deal with every day and is a very dangerous fact pattern. The person with the machete wasn't there to go after you. He's going after your bananas.
But I didn't know that.
So, see, this is what I'm saying is
Right.
this is the stuff we get in the AG's office.
Right.
That we think we know what's going on. Then we find out that he really was the guy that was stealing your bananas every season.
Right.
So you got to be careful because you may start to lose the protection of the.
Understood. And I, I don't want to represent a demographic people out there, but there are farmers who are shoot first, ask questions later kind of thing, because they've been so, robbed so many times that it's just, they lose their head, right? Sometimes they're veterans as well, And so they see this guy, he's got a machete in his hand, he's in his property, and then, hey, finally I caught this guy stealing my bananas, because before that it's gone. But now he's here and he has a machete in his hand, and
Yes,
this is
sir.
my property.
Sir,
You know what I mean?
As a veteran and one of the general's newest assistant attorney generals, in your situation, when you confronted the individuals with the machete, they were not in a threatening posture for your life. Had they chased you to your vehicle, yes, you could have used the weapon in self-defense. But if you would have went back to your truck, got that shotgun, and came back and shot them, we would be prosecuting.
He just gave the basic response, the law enforcement response. By the way, there was a farmer in the MTM discussion. You guys raised always the difficult fact patterns to follow. And that's why with the Maurizo outreach that we just had, if you go by the rule, you can't use deadly force for the property, right? But that's why I said, shoot them in a non-deadly part of the body to subdue the person, and then you call the police to come in. Don't watch them bleed out, by the way. So, but my point is, for the situation, the fact pattern that you just gave, he has the machete. What I probably would do was keep your video on, step back, get my shotgun, and make him make his decision. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you had more firepower there than he did. But again,
Firepower, right? And I'm not thinking I have a shotgun in the back of my truck to confront him. I confronted him.
There is nothing wrong with doing that. Like
Right.
if you had a firearm,
Right.
like the investigator Salisbury, just do that number.
Right.
That is not illegal.
Right.
You know?
In the real scenario, he wasn't aggressive, right? He was saying, hey, yeah. And I was videotaping it, and I shared it with the mayor, and I think a lot of people got a copy of that. But it could have turned ugly if he became aggressive towards me.
Yeah.
And I had the camera, and I'm going, oh, shit, this guy is going to come after me. I'm going to go get my shotgun,
Right.
kind of thing.
But you had the good sense, because it's often in the videos that the police officers and the AG's office and the jury, that's what makes or breaks the cases, is looking at that video. And if it's a good video like you were doing, it will protect you if you got hurt or if you had to take an action, right? So videos are always good.
Those people who take risk of stealing is they don't know the firepower that the person that they're stealing from may have in their vehicle or in their house.
Right.
So they're taking their lives at risk. But, when you talk about meth and drugs, that's a different story. They're not thinking sensibly.
Exactly.
Right? And that's why with the castle doctrine, if we have the firepower, it's kind of like a
Deterrence.
quick decision that you have to make. You have the firepower, and if this guy comes after you, boom. If this guy doesn't come after you, like what happened in Nimitz, where this guy was redoing the house. And the guy had sense enough to know that, hey, on drugs, but he doesn't pose a threat to my life, so he
Immediate
called the
threat.
police.
Right. The statute is worded around, if you look at it, on immediate threat of bodily injury. See, when the police go there and you say, hey, I shot him because he went through the front door, if you say something that shows that he wasn't an immediate threat, like I knew who this guy was, he always comes in, he sees my daughter, you're probably going to get arrested. So you need to know, assess the situation. I'm not saying to lie, but just be careful, because when the police come there, they're looking at the statutes, okay, on whether or not you're qualifying for the protection or you've gone outside of the protection that's in the statute. Like my prosecutors have said, this is not a license to execute people on the statute. You guys have things that you wanted to?
Y'all have asked us some questions, so we're going to turn the tables here on you a little bit, right? And if you want to raise your hand, you can. If you don't, don't. But there's been a lot of talk about, well, where to shoot, warning shots, this, that, or the other. Okay, how many people in here feel confident? How many people have fired a pistol before? Okay, so there's a lot of people here that haven't even fired a pistol before. Pistols do not have great accuracy, right? Unless you have trained to use that pistol, it is going to be difficult for you to hit something unless the other person attacking you is very close to you. Now, if someone's breaking into your home, how close do you want them to be? That's right. You don't want someone's breaking into your home that's threatening your family. You don't want them anywhere close to you. Okay? So when people talk about things like warning shots or where to shoot, that's for a level of expertise and knowledge that is beyond most of us. I'm also a veteran, and so I have had a little bit of firearm experience, but I certainly would not be doing that. If someone broke into my home and I'm worried about my family, I'm going to shoot. And I'm going to shoot to hit. I'm not going to worry about any of those niceties. When your life is put on the line, you need to react, and you don't have a lot of time to think. There's a lot of stress involved, a lot of fear. That's why it's good to know these things ahead of time so that you can know how to act when that happens, if it happens, which is hopefully not.
So obviously, you see two different schools of thought. For those that have used firearms before, you control the timing, the ability to control the situation. For the women that don't have that, we open this up, you need to have proper training. You've taken the effort to come here. If you choose to use the firearm, which is the safest way to protect yourself, because as Deputy Lyle indicated, the distance is important. You don't want that person too close to you because they could take the firearm and use it on you. So you need to get the proper training. Using the firearm for target shooting, whatever the case is, the more you use the firearm, the more you'll understand the kickback, how to operate it, how to clear jams, stuff like that. So it's a choice that everybody has to make in their life, but knowing what the law, what the parameters are, how the police officers are going to view it, how the AG's office is going to view it is very important. And I do know those slogans that go around like, better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6, stuff like that. Those are nice things, but when you're in the heat of a situation, how you act will depend and vary on each individual. So, are there other questions that you guys might have on situations? Yes, Mark.
In the scenario of public places, stores, park, a party, or churches, what is, my question would be, if you're licensed, what is the best approach that anybody should take when something happens?
for purposes of the castle doctrine, we're talking about those three areas, right? Your home, which includes the curtilage, the business, or your vehicle, right? So did you want to give it a more specific, your question? Is it outside those areas?
Yeah, sorry, it was,
So,
it's outside.
so again, we talked a little bit about the defense of property or defending yourself. That idea that when your bodily safety is in danger or another person that you're trying to protect, there's certain rules that apply, right? On your basic self-defense, your rules of self-defense. Usually, you can address deadly force with deadly force. Non-deadly force normally has to be with non-deadly response to it, okay? Person's trying to steal your handbag. You know, a mugger comes up and tries to take it off your side in Tumon or something like that. You can't just pick up your gun and shoot him as he's running away. You can't use deadly force to shoot him. But if you guys know how to shoot the firearm, and you shoot him in the leg, and he drops, and you're calling the cops to come get him, you know, that's not intended to kill him. So, well, you could be. Under this AG, you probably won't be, you know. But don't hit the other person right next to that person. You know, that's why you really got to be careful using a firearm, discharging the firearm. Yes, sir.
So the active shooter, if someone pulls out, if someone pulls out a gun, not necessarily you, but pulls out a gun, you see that that person may be in danger, and you shoot that person.
Yeah, I think once you pull out a gun, you're open season.
Force over force, basically, right? Okay.
Yeah, so this falls under the defense of others category. So this, let's say they did pull out a gun and point at you, that's defense of self. But if they pull out a gun and point to the guy at the table next to you, you can pull out your gun and defend him because in a reasonable situation, he would reasonably fear imminent bodily harm or death. It's the exact same sort of situation there.
Active shooter, we pull out our firearm and take them out in the leg or whatever, that's justified, basically.
Shoot him in the body mass.
Yeah.
And I'll say this. If you guys have watched all those killings that have gone on in the States, the only way to save those kids was somebody with a firearm. So, yeah, on Guam, I strongly believe that you need the SARs and whoever else, even the teachers, having an access to a firearm that's in a locked safe, because when the mass shooters come in, they're usually cowards, and the only thing that stops them is when they see somebody else with a firearm. That's the best deterrence and to save lives, is having somebody that knows how to use a firearm confront them.
And active shooters aren't normally druggies, they're something else.
But in a way, in the past, the Philippines, that's how the 45 slug was designed because of the Muslims that were doping themselves up. The military is notorious for using drugs in order to create the super soldiers. So different calibers, the Browning, they were intended to take out the person. The 9mm doesn't really stop an individual that's big, but the 45 slug did. And they were doing it because the Muslims were doping themselves up before they went into battle. So we've got meth addicts here. Meth addicts, it's going to take a certain way to address those people when you're in that situation. And that's why I hear what you guys say when I've only got one shot or something. I don't want to hit him in the leg. I want to hit him in the body mass. It's just you got to know when to use that deadly force, when to use the deadly shot. Those sorts of things. So, yeah. Yes, Ms. Brown.
I understand, when it comes to the protection of our families, okay, our children, our pets. We have indoor pets that we love, we care for as our children had for many years, in our bed with us, so forth. How does this apply?
Well, the Castle Doctrine kind of gives you that overall prophylactic type of protection, right? So once that person has broken in your house, whether you're defending yourself or anything in that house, it's presumed your protection is like Deputy Lyle mentioned, you're presumed to just shoot and you're okay under the statute. Provided there's nothing in particular that stands out. Like I mentioned, you knew that was the boy that is just going to go to see your daughter. yeah. So, yeah. Or
No,
your
it's a-
neighbor's pet, you know?
Yeah, it's a felony, so we've actually charged somebody for shooting the neighbor's pet that was running loose, and they shot it, and I believe they prosecuted as a felony offense, so fur babies are protected. There you go.
Mr. Mark, I believe answering your question, we live in a very different situation here in Guam where we have federal bases, we have like the VA. While the license to carry is issued by Guam, you can't take it on the federal base. You will be charged federally. We have no authority over that. Same with the VA clinic. You cannot, that is a federal installation. You can't take your firearm with a Guam firearm license onto these properties. So I think that was your question earlier, no?
Yeah, yeah. So again, this is the Castle Doctrine. We talk about that. But I'm open to any other questions on the general self-defense umbrella. Okay, so based on the
Private businesses that post signs that no firearms other than law enforcement. So for somebody to bring it into like a store, like Micronesia Mall,
Or
they
Home
have the
Depot.
sign, Home Depot, they have no firearms permitted, only law enforcement. For those that carry concealed, what would be the best avenue or approach to deal with that scenario or that situation? Should the manager of the store identify somebody because I guess it's protruding out that
Right.
you're not permitted to do that?
I think the general rule would be, because, and without further legal research on this, I would respond that because it's private property, that they have the right to restrict what type of deadly weapons are brought on that place, the mall or Home Depot, stuff like that. I know the courts, obviously, they do the pat-downs.
How about with
Yes, Mayor.
government facilities?
I think the government facilities, I know that obviously the courts, the AG's office, there's certain,
Well,
I think
because
that
of
they-
our senior citizen operations, the gym, the gymnasium, and then just, all the public facilities that we have, and then people are walking in with unconcealed. I mean, it's showing,
Right.
but it's making everybody else around them nervous.
uncomfortable, yeah.
Uncomfortable, and because what if they lose control over it, if somebody grabs it from them or whatever?
You know, you raise an interesting question. I know in schools, obviously, they can prevent that, right? The schools have an interest in ensuring the safety, but like if you were to go to like your mayor's office and stuff like that, to not have it, I'd probably have to research it more. I would think that, again, like the court, they have a security policy there, and I want to say it was passed through regulations on not having firearms except if you're law enforcement, i.e. the marshals. They even take the police officers' firearms for purposes of maintaining the security. On a government premises, you probably could, but how you do it, you're the mayor, so you have the control of, you're an elected leader of the properties given you custody of you. So I would say offhand, without researching it further, you probably would have that right to do that, but you'd probably have to make sure everybody, other than maybe the police officers.
So can you just put a sign up there and say no firearms allowed in this building?
For the general public, probably. But again, I'll have to research that a little bit more. But I think offhand, you probably could do it because you're the mayor. Just like the court can do it because the court has a specialized interest. The schools would probably be able to do it because they have a specialized interest. And it's the principal of the board that would probably implement that policy because that is the property of that official given the jurisdiction. Oh, which is this? This is the Castle document. No? Oh, okay, good, good. So. Very good. So my prosecutors actually have a statute on this right now. So this is the list, right? That's a concealed license. So we have a statute that indicates a license issued under the section does not authorize any person to openly carry. So this would be the person with the firearms ID, right? So under the statute, the senators have said that in these areas, just because you have a firearms ID does not allow you to carry weapons at any detention facility, prison or jail, any courthouse, like we talked about, any courtroom, except that nothing in this section would preclude a judge from carrying a concealed weapon. The Guam legislature, private property or business premises where carrying a firearms is prohibited by the property owner, the mall, Home Depot, lessee or business owner, and said prohibition is posted on the premises, so they'd have to post it, like you were mentioning. While under the influence of alcohol, so if you're under alcohol, you don't get to have your firearms ID and firearms. Any place where the carrying of a firearm is prohibited by federal law. The Guam gun-free school zone, so anywhere around the schools cannot have a firearm. Any property rented, leased, owned, or controlled by the Guam Police Department, including but not limited to any police station or precinct, substation, administrative office, office space, with the only exception being the Guam Police Armory for the purposes of inspection, registration, or transfer of the firearm, or the firearm shall be unloaded. So, yes, the statute specifically addresses that you cannot have those firearms in certain areas, and it's probably, if it's not on the list, you probably can make an argument that you have a right to bring the firearm there. That's how it, first blush, that's how I would say it. So in this list also, let me just throw these frequently asked questions that we put together based on our other outreaches. Do I have to retreat when in my home, business, or vehicle when a person is breaking in? No. There was a rule in the past that when a person is coming at you with force, that you have the duty to retreat. You can't just stand your ground and then get assaulted and get shot and then get hurt, sort of thing. There's an idea that you, in public, you have to retreat to a certain extent. Under the Castle Doctrine, can I use deadly force, i.e. a firearm, machete, knife, etc., to kill an intruder in a residence, business, or vehicle owned by myself or another when in reasonable fear of bodily injury to myself or another? Yes, you can. If place owned by another, you need to be there by permission. Like if you're in the house, like we mentioned before, by permission. Can I use deadly force to protect property? No, only if yours or another's life is in immediate danger. We talked about that. If a person is in my curtilage and I am in reasonable fear of immediate danger, may I use deadly force? Yes. However, the curtilage must have posted no trespassing signs. Do I need a fence around my curtilage to use the Castle Doctrine? No, you don't need a fence to use the Castle Doctrine. If somebody breaks into my farm to steal, can I shoot him? Shoot to kill? No, unless it is a curtilage with proper no trespassing signs and you're in reasonable fear of immediate bodily injury, that sort of thing. Does the Castle Doctrine replace your inherent right to self-defense? No, it provides additional protections by creating presumptions to use deadly force and not require you to retreat. What is the best advice on when to use deadly force? This is what I mentioned before. Wait to the last possible time and then use deadly force. And that's meant to avoid the jury. So they'd say you didn't execute somebody when you knew otherwise. Other questions that you guys may have? Senator.
So the curtilage law now includes your vehicle.
Well, even without the curtilage, the vehicles was included in the original. That's like
Okay,
your home.
So, not a lot of gun owners have concealed licenses. How would an individual carry a gun in their vehicle with not being arrested? I have a broken tail light, GPD pulls me over. I have my gun under my car seat, and they'll bust me for a concealed weapon.
So in all jurisdictions, the chief law enforcement officer has what they call prosecutorial discretion. The courts can't have the AG exercise it or not exercise it. In the states, they have county attorneys, district attorneys, those sorts of things. Guam, you have one attorney general that handles both the civil and the criminal. this is the criminal question. The senator is correct. You have a person that's breaking in your car to hurt, just breaking in your car while you're there. Instead of having your firearm in your trunk, unloaded as the law requires you to have with a non-concealed firearms permit, and you have it for whatever reason in your cab of your vehicle, and you shoot that person and kill that person, AG's office, AG would look at it on the facts, verify that that person was an assailant, like what happened in Jonestown at that Payless, when those meth addicts went after that car, discharges it, kills the person. Okay, you have the protection of the Castle Doctrine, but you've now violated the statute that says that you had a firearms ID, but it wasn't a concealed. You violate the statute. There's a misdemeanor or something like that. AGs probably wouldn't charge it. Okay, that's that situation when you're in technical violation of the law, but we probably wouldn't do it. And again, it goes to, even if we did charge it, we have Senator Lamarena sitting on the jury. We have you guys sitting in the jury. You probably come out unanimously not guilty.
Well,
So,
in a situation where, I don't have a concealed weapons license, and where do I carry my gun? If I want to protect myself in my vehicle, I know I'm going to go to a location where it could be dangerous.
right.
How do I transport that
See,
firearm?
you technically, and by the way, the Castle Doctrine says nothing about firearms. Doesn't say that that you have to have a concealed or a non-concealed, or you have to have a registered firearm. Nothing. So it's the main facts of what occurred are the most important part of the case. You are being assaulted in your house, business, or car, right? So once that's established, at least from my perspective, whether you took a knife, well, the knife isn't really a situation. Even if you didn't have you had a firearm in your car, and you didn't have it wasn't registered, and you didn't have a permit for it, I probably wouldn't charge you. As long as it's substantiated that you were protecting yourself in that car. Right, but you could get an AG, and this is why the AG elections are so important, because there's AGs that clearly are very fragile in these regards, say that, hey, I'm going to charge you if you violate that law because I don't like guns, that sort of thing. Again, my perspective is two. Number one, it's just not fair. That person had to protect himself, so probably give him a warning. Get your firearm registered and so forth. But I guess if you're a felon and you couldn't get it registered, you couldn't have a firearms ID, but you're in a situation where somebody was coming at you, it would probably raise a few red flags in our office of why that felon even had a firearm in his car and was protecting himself. So it gets kind of hairy there. What else were you using that firearm for? But again, if you're just a concealed, non-concealed firearms owner, it probably wouldn't even get looked at our office that much. A warning given to get your proper license for that. But again, you could use a knife, and it would still fall under the Castle Doctrine if you knifed the person that was coming into your car. So, but good question, Senator. That's the type of questions we got from the last two outreaches, is that it's a wife, and the husband isn't there, but the husband has a firearm. She uses it, and she doesn't even have a license for it. We wouldn't charge it.
Now, in a situation, I hear people in my garage, and they're stealing my car.
Yep.
And can I, again, will I be charged to fire in the air warning shots?
Like the doctor mentioned, no. Technically, you're in violation because you got that 50-yard rule.
Yeah.
But I mean, no. It's just one of those. Guam has gotten to the point now that there's too many of these things happening every night. People are jumping the gates. They're taking coolers, bush cutters, anything that's not latched down out of the house.
So I won't be arrested for illegal discharge of my
You
weapon.
could be, but you wouldn't be. If the cops came over and says your neighbor just complained that you were firing off your firearm, you explained that the kid was in my garage taking my bush cutter. I don't see why we would charge it. The slant on that is you actually shoot them. That was the one in Mauricio that they were very adamant about. They were adamant that they should kill that person for taking the lawnmower. And the fact pattern went that he's pushing the lawnmower out the front of the gate, and it gets shot in the back. The guy thought that, and he was serious. He will shoot the guy if he's taking his lawnmower. See, this is where we can't go that far as a community, and the statutes don't allow it. But, as I said, you can shoot him in the leg, do something, so the cops come, and then they see that, okay, you discharge your firearm, you hit him in a place that probably wasn't going to kill him, but don't let him bleed out. That was the point. You call him after the guy's not moving. Yes? Uh-huh.
Experiencing someone stealing night after night, right? And so you get frustrated because it's happening when you're not home or you're sleeping. So you set a trap, maybe something that's not so serious, but maybe like a bear trap.
Okay, let's just step back a moment. We talked about the Texas, this is the MTM outreach. In Texas, I remember reading in in law school, you have a barn, you put a string to your shotgun, and the guy opens the barn, and then he gets blasted with the shotgun, right? That was the Texas way that don't mess with my property, right? So, but you go back into this idea, and Home Depot's not doing it anymore. In a few years ago, 10 years ago, before everybody was getting sued, the businesses would literally, if you're shoplifting, they'd grab the person, put handcuffs on them, and handcuff them to the wall and wait for the cops to come over. Now, because of all the lawsuits, a lot of these stores, they're just watching them take their stuff, go out the door. I know Home Depot, I've seen several cases like that. It's because they're so scared about being sued for false arrest or all the lawyers in the litigation that we see in the States. You're talking about a person's on your property. First of all, the bear trap will probably break their ankle, right, when it snaps. It's along that line. How far can you go as a property owner on your property without killing somebody? The fact pattern was brought out. Person stealing your property, you shoot him in the leg and call the cops. That's just like a bear trap, you know. But you got to make sure that that bear trap isn't going to kill him, you know.
Pretty simple answer. Although again, as the generals pointed out, it may depend on different administrations. Who's charging that day? What police officer shows up? But do not trap your homes. Just don't do it. Don't trap your properties. Maybe you're worried about robbers. Well, what happens when there's someone that's, the neighbor's kid that hops the fence, someone that's working on the property? It's if you put a trap down and someone gets seriously injured, you're going to have some serious problems. If you don't get charged criminally, you're going to get sued civilly, and you don't want to deal with that either.
Hi, so if I see my neighbor fearing for their lives, and am I permissible to go over there and intervene and use deadly force, and would that be covered under Castle Doctrine?
Very good question. That was the same question we had, I think it was Mauricio last time. The response was, okay, the fact pattern is it's usually Castle Doctrine, you're in the house, you're in your home, or you're there by invitation, right? You're talking about you hear something going on, you get a firearm or some weapon, and you go over to try to protect them. My response to that last time was, number one, Castle Doctrine won't protect you, but the statute clearly has protection of others. I was a defense attorney and won a case on that fact pattern. They actually killed the person. My client was accused of murdering the person that was trying to hurt his friend, Micronesians, and the jury found not guilty because he went over trying to protect that individual and ended up killing the person that was hurting his friend. So, yeah. Right. Yes, sir.
So I saw a video about yesterday in the case of road rage. Let's say on the road, you cut someone off, you're the aggressor in that case, all right? You have a concealed carry permit. All is good. You guys pull up to a traffic light. The person you cut off comes up behind you. You can't, plow through the car in front of you. You can't reverse. You can't go anywhere. He gets out of his car. Your window is tinted. He can't see you, but you can see him through the rearview mirror, holding a firearm, walking up towards your window, not pointing it at you, but banging on your window. Can you shoot him?
That's a very good question. I would say it depends on, well, Castle Doctrine applies to your car. So let's start there. So if you're in your vehicle, and that will apply. Are they threatening you? Because part of what the general has said is there is a presumption that you are the one in danger, there's an imminent danger. However, if it's not an imminent danger, that's kind of where we have to look at the facts. We have to really kind of look at everything in that, and then put yourself in the shoes of the jury in that also. You know, how would you look at it? Because the story is going to be two stories, right? The story is that the person that was knocking on your door put you in imminent danger. Defense counsel is going to say they weren't doing that. They just happened to have the gun because they weren't sure, and they just wanted to make sure that, because since you were the initial aggressor, they were protecting themselves. So that's kind of what's tricky about that situation.
See where you've gone with that? You gave a very, very difficult fact pattern. You're saying that you were the primary aggressor in some sort of a road rage, nonviolent situation, got them all angry, then they're coming after you, right? And then they're coming with a firearm, and that's imminent danger when you're seeing that firearm coming at you. You have a firearm. So your question is, can you now shoot through your window and shoot him before he shoots you? That's the fact pattern, right?
Yes.
Think of yourselves all sitting in the jury with that type of fact pattern. It's kind of like, who escalated it? Who started the fight? It's usually, when we do analysis on assault cases, who threw the first punch? That's usually the question that happens, because that's what the jury wants to know. Who threw the first punch? That person threw the first punch, but you just escalated it. If you shoot that person before he discharges his firearm at you, then you're probably going to be in trouble, because you took a nonviolent situation, and even though he had the firearm with him, because he's going to say, you know, I wanted to talk to him, but I was worried who's in the car about that. You know what I mean? It's just the defense attorney and the prosecutors are going to hack it out before the jury, and all of you will have to decide who's at fault in that situation. And it's not an easy answer.
One important distinction, everything the general said is exactly right. But one distinction, because we're talking about the Castle Doctrine, it only applies if the other person is in the process of unlawfully and forcefully entering. So at least in the fact pattern that you're set up, they have not tried to unlawfully or forcefully enter your vehicle. So the Castle Doctrine's not going to save you, but self-defense, that's, as the general pointed out, if someone's walking up on a gun on me, I'm going to feel threatened, and I'm going to feel like I need to defend myself. You can still defend yourself, but the Castle Doctrine won't be there for you.
Plot twist.
I'm sorry?
There was a plot twist. At the end of the video, the person who got out of the car walked over to the victim's car with a gun, actually pointed the gun at his face. But then at that point, it's too late for the victim, to pull out his gun and, you know, point it back at him.
Well, the question is, when do you discharge it, right?
Yeah.
So the person's approaching your car with the firearm, and you're the one that caused the escalation of it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, if I was in a situation, I wouldn't shoot the guy just because he's coming to the car with his firearm. But once he raises it and points it, that's where you probably want to wait. That's why I say, sometimes if you've got the sense of mind, wait to the last possible time before you discharge your firearm, so you can explain it to the jury. I had no other choice. I may have started this, but when he brought that, we got into a non-violent situation, okay? You were playing your little road rage game.
Mm-hmm.
I waited until the last possible time, and he came to me. You're probably going to get either a mistrial, or you're lucky if you get not guilty. Yeah, it's just a very, very sensitive.
So let's say you're in that situation. He pulls up, gets out, walks up, pulls the gun out, points it. At the beginning, you said, I'm blocked. There's someone in front of me. I can't plow through them. Someone's pointing a gun at you. You're not going to hit the gas and move forward a little bit, even if that requires plowing through that car in front of you turn the steering wheel kind of going left or right, and do that. In that same sense, though, you're not going to get much movement out of that, but in that time frame, you've changed where he can shoot because you've moved yourself. And then you've given yourself just an extra moment there to retrieve your firearm, which if you're driving, you know your concealed carry. You've gone through this scenario in your head at some point. What if I need to get to my gun? So this isn't a new event for you, at least in your mind. You've already prepared for this, correct? Yeah, so I would gun it, as in hit the throttle, try and move as much as possible and make it a little bit more difficult on that person to shoot. Also, in your initial kind of plot twist, when he raises the gun, there's a chance he can't shoot. There's a chance that gun's unloaded, or maybe he's just a really bad shot. Safety's on, because in that sort of situation, that person is clearly not thinking straight or clear, because they've left their vehicle and approached another vehicle that they cannot see in that cut them off with a gun out.
That's right. So, but this is where I talked about the duty to retreat. You're probably going to get one of the attorneys, the defense attorney, or the prosecution. We probably would be bringing in the rules on duty to retreat. Whether you have a duty to retreat, I think you might have a duty to get out of there, because you're in a situation. He's escalating it. You're in the public. He's not in your car where the Castle Doctrine applies. You have a duty to get out of there, but you put it where you bracket it. You can't get out of there. That's why you're going to get a lot of jury feeling on what happened here. Who was at fault, really? Because you were the primary aggressor in a somewhat violent situation when you're playing the card game. So. Right. Yeah. It's usually the guy that throws the first punch. On the assault cases, mutual combat where both of them are charged, it's usually who threw the first punch on those situations. Joe, did you have a question?
I just want to go back a little bit in regards to firearms on businesses. I know that Donkey, okay, permits concealed carry and law enforcement. I also know that
They permit it.
they permit it.
Okay.
It's right there on their sign. That also applies to the Micronesia Mall. Okay. Payless supermarkets have a sign that prohibits firearms, just firearms. Guam GPO also has a sign that prohibits firearms. So I've done a lot of research from NRA, USCCA, all the organizations in the States, and I'm not an attorney, but I also subscribe to these attorneys that give these advice. Okay. There was an incident, it was in Pennsylvania, and the law there states that firearms are permitted on all restaurants, whether CCW or whatever. Gunmen came in and started shooting, killed a lot of people. There was a legislative hearing on that incident to whether allow firearms in restaurants, and this lady came up and talked to the senators, and she said she had a firearm, but it was locked away in a safe in her car because it wasn't allowed to be brought into the restaurant. If she had her weapon with her, she could have neutralized that threat immediately before the 10th person got shot. Okay? So she doesn't blame the shooter, she blames their senators because they could not allow that. Restricting firearms, say GPO, law-abiding gun owners, we will abide by it.
Yeah, you see,
A
Joe,
criminal
you're talking
could
about
care less.
the basic problem out there.
Yeah.
If you I'm speaking to the choir here. Everybody that's here, I'm not worried about. It's obviously the people that are breaking the law, the people that don't want to get, they can't get or don't want to get their firearms IDs. They're taking out the serial numbers on their firearms. You know, we're speaking to the law enforcement, the people that are pro-law enforcement, that go to these events, that want to come to these events, that may be online. So, Joe, but what you're talking about, there's no obligation to protect anyone. Unless the statute says, like your kids, you have an obligation to protect your children, you have an obligation, I don't know if it's your spouse, but I mean, the point is that unless the law requires an obligation to protect somebody, you don't have the obligation. The fact that that some organizations want you to have a firearm in their vicinity is the idea that people that register their firearms to get concealed permits are there, they will use it to protect others. So they're trying to get the benefit from security, usually. That's what you're getting.
Anyway, the lady that testified in front of their Senate was, her father got shot. The mother went to assist him. The guy shot the mother.
Yeah.
Right in front of her. I don't know if you guys have seen this or read this. But as far as firearms in businesses, I think Guam also restricts having firearms in restaurants in Guam as well. I believe that, if I was reading the law.
It's just a list, like I just read out.
Yeah.
It's up to the private property owner to decide. Right.
So if there's no sign stating, and according to NRA, USCCA, if it's not posted, that means you should
bring
be
it
able
in.
to carry it
Right.
in. So that basically applies here as well.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, yes, Senator.
You know, again, you may not be criminally charged, but you can still be civilly sued.
In non-Castle Doctrine cases, yes. But whether they're going to win or not, at some point they're going to have to go before a jury again also.
Yeah.
So, and I think I know on Guam, on civil juries, they also have to be unanimous. So if, but the standard of proof, as you're pointing out, is different. So when they're trying you for a crime, the government, we must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you're guilty. On the civil standard, it's going to be normally the preponderance of the evidence.
Right.
So it's like a little bit over 50% that this person should be held liable or not. So that's been the danger of why, like our statute, they have an immunity built into the statute. You cannot sue a person that's exercising their Castle Doctrine rights civilly.
Okay, so that's included in the law.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Plus, you have to pay their attorney's fees if they sue you, and you have to hire a lawyer to defend yourself. They'll have to pay your attorney's fees also.
Yeah, but all the stress, man, that's...
I know.
The
Pain and
other
suffering.
thing, too, is I'm in my car, and a guy jumps in front of me and attempts a carjacking, pulls the gun out. Can I use my vehicle as a weapon?
I would say yes. The Castle Doctrine may not be the one that's going to protect you there. It'll be the AG's office, our prosecutors looking at the facts, and self-defense. The idea that, yeah, what you just said there. I think the reason why most of these statutes include is the carjackings. Like in the States, it's very common. And in the old days, you never had the automatic locks when your car started moving. Now all the cars are locking automatically because people would go up to the intersections, right? That's when they would jump in the cars and take the cars in the States a lot. Good questions. Are there other? Yes, doctor.
Private properties that they prohibit you to carry a gun, like Micronesia Mall, right?
Yeah.
They say, oh, no fire alarm allowed. But what if you do carry the fire alarm to the mall? Can they charge you for that?
Well, they could call the police. The police would probably, I could imagine the police and of course you say I never saw your sign, but I mean, I could see the police just giving a warning, just saying, you know, you have to get off the premises. Yeah, and then, yeah, because the person's normally going to say is, I didn't see your sign. So thank you for letting me know. I won't do it again.
Okay. Second, okay.
Yeah. And, you know, the ramifications could be that if it's taken administratively, they might take the license. Well, that's the extreme. Like if they told you 3 times already, don't do it, and you keep on doing it.
Okay.
They could file a complaint, and you know maybe the court proceeding would take the license, your ability to carry the firearm.
Okay. Another question, just like what happened to the Korean tourists and what happened the Valentine's Day, it happens outside the parking lot.
Yes.
Let's say you're outside and then you have aggressor that approach you, try to rob you. You take out your gun and point on them, just warning, not shooting
Right.
them. And then just get away from me. You know, you would retreat, but you say, get away, stay away. Can they charge you, later come back and sue you for threatening or something like that?
You see, a lot of what goes on in these court proceedings is the establishing the facts, right? So the way that you described it, if you can describe it that way, the Castle Doctrine in the car is very sensitive, like we talked about. You can't roll down your window and just point the gun at the guy and expect the Castle Doctrine will protect you. But the overall idea of self-defense, the AG's office wouldn't charge you for that. My idea is if you have that right to have that firearm and you just show it to them, that's not harassment. That's not any charge that I could think of. So, yeah, that would be basically within your rights to warn the person, I'm going to use it against you if you do anything against me. Yeah.
One more question is,
We want to make sure that this is very clear. So if it doesn't fall under the Castle Doctrine, you can still be sued civilly. So they can still go after you money-wise. We might not charge it criminally, but you can still be sued civilly for that. I want that to be very clear. If it doesn't fall under the,
Correct. This is the criminal prosecution, but as a civil attorney in private practice, first of all, there's not enough lawyers to represent you these days. So for that guy to try to sue you would be very unlikely, but you get two professionals maybe, that they just, because you get a lot of this becoming personal, right? But it's establishing the facts, really. It's what can be established. The danger is when you don't have witnesses, and it's your word against another person's word, and then they start distorting the facts. Like, he pointed the gun at my head, or something more extreme. But I mean, that's why having witnesses, the gentleman that pointed out you're turning on your cell phones, that's usually better than having a lawyer present. It's just turn that video on, so everything's starting to be recorded. So.
well, one more question is, I have not shot anyone yet. I hope I won't. But normally you get a semi-automatic is 9mm. You use hollow point in
Really?
your.
Okay.
Okay. But
Doctor, your idea of hollow point, the reason for hollow point, if the bullet doesn't kill you, the doctor will. Because they got to get the hollow point breaks up in you.
Yeah.
So you get shrapnel all over.
But it doesn't penetrate. It doesn't go to whatever behind you, right? That's what we talked about earlier. But anyway, the 9mm versus 22. 22 is much smaller caliber, but if you use a hollow point 22, would that have the same impact to stop the intruder?
Yeah. Usually the 22 is a little bit above the pellet gun type of shot. So 22s with the big guys, or especially the meth addicts, it's gonna make them bleed. But the thing that stops them is the 9mm, the higher caliber weapons, the 45 definitely. But it has the effect of the impact pushes them down, takes them down. Yeah, you get the gun aficionados coming out here. What is the proper bullet to take out somebody? And by the way, the problem with the rifles is that they have a high likelihood they're going to go through that person and hit something behind it. So, and the shotguns are dangerous because it sprays the BBs, the pellets. So, again, it's a tool that usually the guys are more attuned to knowing what type of weapon to use. 9mm is usually a safer round because it usually stays in the person versus goes through to the next person behind it. So, very good. Other questions that we may have? So, again, I'm speaking to the choir here. Our office is trying to help our community protect themselves, to be aware of what's going on out there. I appreciate your guys being here. I appreciate the mayor, Joe Ariola, He's been very helpful setting up our outreach events. This is online. I'm going to have my staff have a function so that the online viewers can also be asking questions. But this is where it happens. Your questions are important towards your safety, towards your family's safety. And at the end of the day, it's each one of you sitting on a jury. You're the common person. We have a habit, lawyers and professionals have a habit of overthinking things. And sometimes the instinct of, like Mr. Stamps pointed out, to shoot and not think, because sometimes the people that think are the ones that are attacked first. If the person has a firearm and they're in your house, sometimes shooting first might be the best course versus them seeing you also and then shooting you first before you can shoot. So every situation, it depends on how you can handle the firearm, what the situation is, what type of assailant's in your house, those sorts of things. So, so unless we have any other comments, I guess I will wrap it up at that. Joe, you had something?
Quick announcement, sir. For those of you who are contemplating on getting your CCW or to get a firearm, we have a husband and wife team sitting back here who've attended, by the way, they've attended all the meetings, all the seminars, and they are certified NRA instructors for firearms.
Right, for the concealed weapons, right?
For concealed weapons.
For the concealed weapons, it's very important to find a certified firearm instructor in order to get the concealed weapons permit. The non-concealed is easier to get. What I was saying earlier is I think that there, at least at first blush, it looks like a possible violation to require more training for a concealed weapons permit. But that's among the lawyers and the judges at some point.
They're good folks, husband and wife team. Raise your hand. Raise your hand, right there.
Right. Those are the people that you would want to see for the concealed weapons permit because it does require a certification before you can get the concealed. Sorry? Oh, yes, if you're a former vet, yes, thank you for that. I understand that there's also that. You know, some of the cases that you guys should be thinking about also as citizens is that, you know that guy Daniel Penny, the most recent one where he was in the New York subway, and I guess they saw a unbalanced individual that was threatening the people in the subway. What I got out of that case was the suffering that they put that gentleman through. He was a former Marine who clearly, you know, based on all the stories and accounts of it, was there. The guy wasn't coming at him, he was coming at other people. He subdued him. He did not kill him on the spot. Could have killed him, taller guy, but subdued him until the police officers got there. The Attorney General in New York City, or the district attorney, whatever they call that prosecutor over there, prosecuted him and took him before the New York jury, right? So he was put through the criminal justice system and put through the turmoil. I think somebody commented, to go through the turmoil of being tried and have to get the lawyer, put your house up for mortgage in order to get the money to pay the lawyers. And Guam doesn't have enough lawyers right now. So what you're getting in the private community are fewer lawyers that are charging more money because there's less lawyers to be able to do the private practice, the defense bar sort of thing. So those of us who have money, and this is why the Castle Doctrine is important, it's intended to protect your life savings from being used up defending yourselves in court. That Daniel Penny case, they took him all the way to a jury. I think the first jury, the jury that tried him, they had a mistrial. They could not find the homicide was justified, right? Then they dismissed that homicide so they can get the jury to deal with the other ones, and they found him not guilty on the other charges. That's the danger when you're in the public and when you have assets. You're not going to get a public defender appointed to you for free. You're going to have to get your own lawyer. And again, homeowners, they're in the danger zone that you have enough money to pay for your bills, to pay for the house, the mortgage and stuff like that, and you won't qualify for a public defender. So in that case, in my opinion, they had the wrong attorney general that was reviewing the facts, and they had no statutory protection for what had happened to him. Now, I'm sure that he had a GoFundMe page, and there was a certain interest because it was such a high-profile case that may have deferred his attorney's fees. but the reality of the life we live in, and these guys are talking about the civil lawsuits that you can face, apart from a criminal prosecution, which is very expensive because it's very fast. That's the things that are going on in the background. When you see the immunity that was built into the Castle Doctrine, was thinking in advance of the criminal process, the civil process that you might have to go through, so that you don't have to lose your house in order to defend yourself. So, fact specific, every facts that come down. One case, you raised a very good fact pattern. That would be very difficult for the AG's office to be dealing with, on whether to charge it or not. And sometimes you get the default of the Attorney General basically saying, this is a hot potato one way or the other. We see that a person was killed because of it, but did he deserve to die because of it? So sometimes, from a prosecutor's point of view, let the jury decide. Put it before the people and let them decide if this was a wrong case to prosecute. Daniel Penny, I think that was on his face, shouldn't have been prosecuted, but a case like you just pointed out that escalates and the person that was not the primary aggressor is the one that dies. Yeah. So, well, I want to thank everybody for attending, and I think Joe has a setup for Dededo in a few weeks, so May 3rd. May 3rd. So we appreciate your being out here, and continue to please be active members of your community. Spread the word. You know, we need more crime fighters out there than meth addicts, clearly. And thank you for being here.